My name is Amy Corral. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Engagement, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the Museum of Contemporary Art, Detroit, and to introduce you to Jens Hoffmann, who is the Susanne Feld Hilberry Senior Curator at Large. Jens is responsible for setting the artistic direction of MOCAD, so pretty much you'll have his influence in everything that you see here, from the exhibitions that opened last night to this program here today, and all to come in the future. I can tell you about Jens that he is very smart, and he is also very, very funny. And so I would encourage all of you to introduce yourselves to him after the program today, chat him up. To get the conversation started, I'm going to make the introduction. So please welcome MOCAD Susanne Feld Hilberry, Senior Curator at Large, Mr. Jens Hoffmann. You can call him Jens.
Quite an elaborate introduction for someone who's also only on the stage here to introduce someone else. So, as Amy told you, I'm the Senior Curator at Large, Susanne Hilberry Senior Curator at Large, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this collaborative presentation of artist Ragnar Kjartansson, poet Anne Carson, and artist Robert Currie. And before I introduce the artists, I would just like to thank the Taubman Foundation and Ethan and Gretchen Davidson for making Ragnar's exhibition possible, and also this public program here this afternoon. Ragnar Kjartansson is an artist from Iceland, and he is best known for large-scale installations that are constructed out of music, performance, sculpture, and film. Inspired by the music scene in Reykjavik, where he lives and works, he has created numerous immersive compositions that often involve live musical performances, just like here in Detroit. He has collaborated prolifically with other artists, as you will hear this afternoon. He has collaborated with the US band The National, the Viennese Boys Choir, and the Icelandic musician Davio Poa Jonsson. The partnership, I'm having something stuck in my throat. The partnership between Ragnar and the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit began last year when we presented a 5-channel video installation that is entitled The End, and invokes the American West. It was shot in the Canadian Rocky Mountains, and yeah, no, I think I'm better now. Thank you so much. Filmed against the sublime landscape of the Rocky Mountains, the piece explores the kind of human narrative that is drummed and sung, harkening back to a time and a place that's probably more legend than it was fact. Its acoustic country arrangement in the key of G borrows from the musical heritage of the region. It depicts country and Western music, was certainly an inspiration for the piece. Unlike the G scale, which is commonly used for love songs or more romantic melodies, the E minor, which we have here, achieves a more melancholic, reflective feeling. In Kjartansson's new commissions, this is a piece that he has especially made for the museum, this pensive chord reverberates throughout this building, as you heard before, and it's bouncing around in the architecture. The piece is entitled Woman in E. The lady that you see is dressed in a gold gown, standing on a rotating pedestal, playing the guitar without any other instruments accompanying her. She's alone with the instrument and an amplifier. The atmosphere around her glitters, the golden glitter that you see here, and it sort of has this very ethereal feel, and it's perhaps also capturing a little bit of the sentiment of the city of Detroit, with a lot of empty space around it and a certain melancholica that it brings across. And of course, it is also made in relationship to Detroit's musical history, which, as you all know, was the birthplace for Motown, techno, and many other music genres. Ragnar Kjartansson's work has been exhibited widely around the world. Most recently, Ragnar had a solo exhibition at the Palais de Tokyo, which I think is still ongoing. He's traveling from here to Washington to the Hirshhorn Museum, where he is having a solo presentation. He also showed at the New Museum in New York, at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Cleveland, and I could go on and on. Many, many other museums all around the world. Now moving on to Ragnar's partners in crime for the presentation this afternoon. Anne Carson, very happy to have her here at the Museum of Contemporary Art. As you probably know, she's one of the most celebrated poets and translators in the English-speaking world. She's best known for the book, The Autobiography of Red, which is a retelling of the Greek legend of Brian. She has received many prizes, such as a Guggenheim Fellowship, the MacArthur Genius Award, the T.S. Eliot Prize, a Lennon Literary Award, the Pushcart Prize, among many others. Carson has taught at McGill University, the University of Michigan, as well as in Princeton. She's a professor of the classics, with a background in classical languages, comparative literature, anthropology, and history. What probably characterizes her work the best is how her writing brings together and blends many different literary formats, such as poetry, prose, criticism, translation, dramatic dialogue, fiction, and non-fiction. Carson has become well known also for her collaborative performances. Many, of course, she has developed with her partner, the artist Robert Currie, who is referred to, if I'm correct, as the randomizer during the creative process. Carson and Currie have also collaborated with Merce Cunningham Dance Company, as well as with Lou Reed and Laurie Anderson. So please join me in welcoming Anne Carson, Robert Currie, and Ragnar Kjartansson. Thank you very much.
Hi, thanks for coming. What we're going to do this afternoon is have an endless series of introductions. So I'm going to now introduce the two pieces that we're about to perform. And then Ragnar will introduce the first one. And Ingeborg will introduce the second one. And I will again introduce the second one. And during all that, Robert Currie will be making string sculptures. Is that clear? So we're going to do two pieces. The first one is called Kashmir Q&A. It's a questionnaire. And I made it, Currie and I made it for Ragnar's recent LP. And Ragnar will explain more about that in a second. And then after that, we're going to do a long poem that Currie and I made when we lived in Iceland in a small town. So before we do that, Ingeborg will explain about the small town, and then I'll explain about the poem, and I think that's all. Meanwhile, as I said, Robert Currie will be making sculptures with string.
Not saying a word.
So we're ready?
Yeah.
Go, Ragnar.
Yes, hello. I'm Ragnar, and it's an honor to be here on stage with you folks and to be with you folks here out in the auditorium. And it's great to be here in Detroit, working on Woman in E with these great, with great 7 awesome performers. But the first thing we're going to do here. And I'm just so glad that we're doing this, because this was supposed to be a regular art talk or something like that. And then Anne and Currie were in the neighborhood, and so we have turned this into psychedelia. And here also on stage with us is Ingibjörg Sigurjónsdóttir, a randomizer from Reykjavik City, and a collaborator of mine, and a lover. Sorry. So the Q&A, which was created for this record that we're just putting out this this month, I asked Anne to write I'm having a blackout. What's the word?
Liner notes.
Liner notes. Liner notes for the record. It's a record called The Visitors, and it's music I made with friends of mine for a video installation. And it's actually released on our record company, Bel Air Glamour Records. Yeah. Let's go.
I am the city of Saskatoon, a papyrus fragment, poverty, the genius of the bad landscape painter, the lake, those. What is your favorite room?
How do nights differ from days there? What smells do you notice throughout the house?
Do you sleep well? Do you dream when you sleep?
Yes, I dream, but I never have nightmares. Do you dream of it after?
Which represents endurance to you, the land or the sea? What kind of pillow do you prefer? What is your philosophy of time, or at least your definition of time?
Do you neaten up your bed in the morning? Why? Do you use anyone else's toothpaste, skin products, or pills when these are left in the bathroom?
If I do so, it is a sign of deep melancholia.
Why did God make us?
God made us by accident. Do you
Gardening.
approve of
Here
realistic
is a list
techniques
of
like
what grows in our
foreshortening
yard.
in painting?
Some really tall grasses, ferns,
What
big
is the
ailing oak
silliest
trees,
slash
and some
smartest
kind of
thing your
flowers
mother
that are
ever said
purple
to
and
you?
orange-yellow.
I'm not familiar with this tool.
Colonization, time drops down at bars,
The dog would like it?
darker in the nights,
The kind of pillow that's not worry about?
the sea.
Any, as long as I am entitled to tear it apart whenever it suits me.
You should feel sorry for them.
Sexy?
My real hit in life.
I move past my feelings.
I'm not familiar with this tool.
Once I slept in a contrabass case.
No pillow.
Yes.
Don't know.
Not a fan, I'm curious now.
Very much.
Sexy?
Very much.
No idea. Xerox in 1906, extraterrestrials were spotted unloading unwieldy boxes in a field in rural Connecticut. Contents remain unknown, but these boxes had an eerie electric charge on the surfaces. It is a world of abbots and toner and grayscale.
I like watching paint dry.
Sorry,
No?
it still leaves God untouched.
I find realistic techniques delightful.
Yes, during the night,
Don't know, it's in my thoughts a lot.
both.
The literal zones.
The end,
Just smile.
the sea,
The sea.
the sea,
The sea.
the land.
The sea.
Why, yes, most always.
Because of my baby bunny, she laid little poops all over.
Yes,
Small ceremonies are good for the soul.
sometimes it has to do with Martin Luther.
Yes?
Then I can walk tall into the day sometimes.
I love you.
I try to.
Otherwise, I get restless
No, I will go do it now.
by losing track.
Put full faith in Ricky.
I hear Heraclitus whisper in the waves.
Lutheran guilt.
Cigarettes and bourbon.
Best thing is to smile.
Pills can help.
Breath deep frozen orange juice.
Reality was a mirage to interrupting me.
Dress dandy.
May God make us God.
No mirrors.
Silky nightgown.
Be a baby.
Surrender.
Ricky.
How do you sustain morale during a long project? Whose idea was the canon?
Canon was Ricky's idea. Do you ever use the English language reference tool Roget's Thesaurus? Is there a corresponding Icelandic reference tool?
Do you like jam?
Do you like the films of Eric Romer?
Have you ever been tempted to live a double life?
Frequency. Pictures, toys, gear, aids.
Mostly postcards and posters. And I need glasses. Fantasies? Fetishes?
Bran muffins, swimming.
Need to be in love?
Mood issues.
Ever do it for money?
The sycamore tree has leaves as big as dinner plates, so there's room enough for a green salad, an entree, some fish, or a souffle. They have flaky scalps and are hygienically lacking, but retain a regal composure.
I'm pretty sure we'll surrender.
It is a way to travel.
I feel like in a giant chestnut.
How sweet and how it moves.
A shallow closet with a narrow bench and a rope to pull you up.
Thin cradle of feathers.
Backwards is north.
Just smile.
As a noun, snare or lasso. As a verb, flick, flip, twirl.
Me and Daddy switching beds.
Power.
For a year, I made homemade toothpaste.
For ethnicity.
No, for international good times.
For loneliness.
Yes, always for loneliness. How evaluate? Main fear?
Backdrop. Nicknames. A boy in a box. 10 and 11. 10 all 10. 11 at 4 at 3. The Hudson. Wind. Everyone else. The library all leather bound and curved. The Russell. The end. How was that? That probably made no sense at all, but originally it was a questionnaire that I sent to all 8 members of the music group that made the visitors, and they all answered the questions, and then the questions were amalgamated into that sort of chaos. So there we are. Part 2.
I'm going to tell you a bit about this little village in Iceland called Stykkishólmur, which relates to the next piece that will be performed. My family lives there, so I have a personal relationship to the place. And visiting my grandparents there, I remember my sweet grandmother coming home from her work at the fish factory and bringing really good fresh fish and cooking it only for the cat. His name was Prince. And I remember eating in their tiny dining room. We would have boiled puffin and drink milk with it. And we were surrounded by family photographs that covered every surface in the room. And some of them had tiny locks of hair inside them. And then I remember my grandfather, who was the local sheriff, coming out of his study, having drunk one of his hidden bottles, and he would come out wearing 2 ties around his neck, acting all normal. And when his friends from the big city would visit and he was low on booze, he would gather around the police and go on a moonshine raid to the nearby farms. And they would confiscate, miraculously, only the stash, but never the equipment. And many years later, Anne and Currie came to the same village, stayed in the same street, just 3 houses up in the library, which was by then Ronny Horn's Library of Water.
And we had such a different life than that. Ronny Horn's Library of Water is an art installation in this town, Stykkishólmur, that Ingeborg described, and it's a former library that is emptied of books, and instead of books, she put into it, I think, 70 or so glass tubes, filled with each one of them some of the water of a glacier, one of the glaciers of Iceland. So she traveled around, collected water from all the glaciers, and put the water in these tubes. And we lived in an apartment underneath in the winter. And one thing about the winter in Iceland is it gets very dark and everyone stays in their house. So there's absolutely nothing to do. And we had certain difficulties with that, which are outlined in this poem, I think. So Ragnar and I will read the poem, which Currie and I wrote together during our time in that town. The poem is called Wildly Constant. Sky before dawn is blackish green, perhaps a sign. I should learn more about signs. Turning a corner to the harbor, the wind hits me a punch in the face.
Between igneous and atmosphere, crows tend like braille, this silver dark stumble like over long songs.
I always walk in the morning. I don't know why anymore. Life is short. My shadow goes before me. With its hood up, it looks like a walking foghorn. Ice on the road, ice on the sidewalk, nowhere to step. It's better to step where the little black stones are, not so slippery.
Harbored by a carpet of moss, the rocks once hot, now still cold.
I guess the little black stones could be lava, or do I exoticize? A man hurries past with a small dog, no one says hello. A pink schoolgirl passes, looks in my face, no one says hello. No one expects to see a fur foghorn out so early. Wind pushes more strongly, I push back, almost home. Why did I come here? New wind every day. Life is for pushing back. Now it is day. A gold eyelid opens over the harbor. People who live here learn not to complain about the wind. I go inside, make tea, eat bran flakes, read 3 pages of Proust. Proust is complaining, it is 1914, about the verb savoir as used by journalists. He says they use it not as a sign of the future, but as a sign of their desires, sign of what they want the future to be. What's wrong with that, I think? I should learn more about signs. The first thing I saw the first morning I went out for a walk in Stikkesholmer was a crow as big as a chair. What's that chair doing on top of that house, I thought. Then it flapped away. A crow that big is called a raven. Corvus corax in Linnaeus's binomial system. Each one makes a sound like a whole town full of ravens in the country I come from. 3 adjectives that recur in the literature on ravens are omnivorous, pernicious, monogamous. I'm interested in monogamous. I got married last May and had my honeymoon in Stikkesholmer. This year I returned to Stikkesholmer to live with my husband for 3 months in one small room. This extreme monogamy proved almost too much for us. Rather than murder each other, we rented a second place, Greta's house, near the pool. Now we are happily duogamous. There are ravens on the roof of both places. Perhaps they are the same ravens. I can't tell. If Ronnie Horn were here, she'd say, ravens are like water. They are wildly constant. They are a sign of Iceland. I should learn more about signs. I came to Stikkesholmer to live in a library.
Nightly, flatbeds arrive harborside and receive the catch, ling, lumpfish, crow, and idle all but one packed in ice, their effort hopeless is doubled, and they contrive a clear, cold fairway for the one left to scavenge.
The library contains not books, but glaciers. The glaciers are upright, silent, as perfectly ordered as books would be, but they are melted. What would it be like to live in a library of melted books, with sentences streaming over the floor and all the punctuation settled to the bottom as a residue? It would be confusing, unforgivable, an adventure.
There is no traffic, tool usual fortunate to skyscraping nesters.
Ronnie Horn once told me that one of the Arctic explorers said, "To be having an adventure is a sign of incompetence." When I am feeling at my most incompetent, as I do in Stickisholmer many a dark morning walking into the wind,
Gunmetal and blue meet at knife-edge horizon.
I try to conjure in mind something that is the opposite of incompetence. For example, the egg. This perfect form, perfect content, perfect food. In your dreams, said a more recent Arctic explorer, Anna Freud, you can have your eggs cooked as perfectly as you want, but you cannot eat them. Sometimes at night, when I can't sleep because of the wind, I go and stand in the library of glaciers. I stand in another world, not the past, not the future, not paradise, not reality, not a dream. An other competence, wild and constant, and who knows why it exists. I stand amid glaciers, listen to the wind outside falling towards me from the outer edges of night and space. I have no theory of why we are here or what any of us is a sign of, but a room of melted glaciers reverberating with the night wind of Stickisholmer is a good place to ponder it. Each glacier is lit from underneath, as memory is. Proust says memory is of two kinds. There is the daily struggle to recall where we put our reading glasses.
Lulloping in the silver giant sleeves, swallow beetles pace while swallows away relentless Polish sky.
And there is a deeper gust of longing that comes up from the bottom of the heart, involuntarily, at sudden times, for surprise reasons. Here is an excerpt from a letter Proust wrote in 1913. We think we no longer love our dead, but that is because we do not remember them. Suddenly, we catch sight of an old glove and burst into tears. Before leaving the library, I turn off the lights. The glaciers go dark. Then I return to Greta's house, wake up my husband, ask him to make us some eggs.
Root, bolt, grey wash, tilt. This place is a ladder top.
Thank you and good night.